Welcome back to the Independent Thinking Online Book Festival. All week I've been having interviews with these amazing authors, all coming together through the Sue Atkins Book Club. And most of the authors have made their books available, including you can do dedications and have signings through the Roving Bookshop. All the information we'll put on, it's on the website, the Independent Thinking website, the Book Festival. We'll put a little link along the bottom as well. And it's been such a rich variety of literature, of authors, of books written for children, books written about children, little children, big children, books for parents, books that are relevant, books for parents but with huge relevance for teachers and vice versa, but I think this is our first proper all singing, all dancing poet that we've had. So some of the books have been in rhyme, but that doesn't mean, just because you can rhyme doesn't make you a poet, whereas Pep the Poet, a friend from a way back, we're looking at his books here, he sent me this one a long time ago along with his latest ones, is David Anderson. So David, welcome, and please tell us a little bit about yourself, how you came to be writing poetry, what you were doing before that, what being a poet is all about.
Hi Ian, hello everybody, and welcome for everybody that's watching. Yeah, I was a poet way back when, as a growing up, my influences in life, well, first of all, I was born in Scotland and I came down to Rugeley, a little town in Staffordshire. The population in 1960 was 2,000. By 1970, it was 20,000, because it was the Staffordshire coal mines, and it was the Scottish and the Geordies and the Welsh and the Irish, and it was a whole cacophony of languages. And I lived on a tough council estate. My mother still lives there. I was a little Catholic, so I went to a different school to everybody else. I had 4 big sisters. I was the only boy and the youngest. As my father said, I was a big Jesse. He used to call me a Jesse. You big Jesse. So yeah. And to make matters worse, I was baptized David Tracy Anderson. My dad was called David, but to save any confusion, we'll call the little fat Catholic boy Tracy, and we'll send him out into the estate. So I went round as a little fat Catholic with a girl's name, living on a tough council estate. And you either had to be a good fighter, which I wasn't, or you had to be a good runner, and I'm not really built for speed. But the one thing I could do, Ian, I could make people laugh. And because all my mums and dads, we'd be playing in the street, and one of the mums would say, Ian, come in and get your dinner. Tell your pals I'll see them later. No, come on, Ian, in the house. And that was then. And then later on, it'd be, Ian, man, getting your dinner. Your mum's cooking your dinner. Come on, son, tell your mates you'll see them later. And then there'd be, hello, Ian, come in now. How are you? So what I used to do was, when I'm mucking about with my mates, I say, Ian, it's time to your mum wants you go in for your dinner. Come on now, Ian. So I could mimic. It started off mimicking my friends' parents, and obviously, all it was Geordie and Irish and a few, and because I live in the Midlands, and they're all very generic continuums of. Because I've had certain people say that's not a Lancashire accent, and it's just a very generic sort of accent to do. So I do apologise if I upset anybody. But I left school, no qualifications to speak of. I survived the Catholic education system of the 1960s and 70s. I learned a thing called ITA, remember the initial teaching alphabet?
Use that myself, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, but you were successful. I ended up as a Mr. Tumble lookalike, you know what I mean?
I didn't have nuns involved in my education.
Yeah, no, nuns, yes. Sister Sledge, systematic. But we used to have, so I left school with no qualifications. And then I was a butcher, I was a coal miner, I worked at Armitage Shanks, you know, the toilet places where I had to paint the inside rims of the toilet lids.
Carry on at your convenience, were you in that?
Yeah, that was all that, mate. I did all that. And then I went through, and then when I was about 30, and then I went to work in what they called special schools in those days. And I went to work with adults, with children with learning disabilities and autism and communicational difficulties. And then at about 32, a friend of mine, Tony, and it was his wife, Susie, that's illustrated my first 2 books. And Tony's from Lancashire, and he said, do us a favour, Dave, go away for 4 years, get a degree and come and teach in my school. And it's the first time, I suppose, anybody believed in me as such. And I remember I came home and I said to Paul, I'm going to give up my job and I'm going to become a teacher. Bear in mind, I had 2 CSE grade 4. And she said, but we've got a mortgage and children. I said, I know, but I'm going to become a teacher. And she said, the resistance she could give is, you can't spell. I said, and here I am, I've written Optimal Learning, a Practical Guide for Teachers, Peter Pants, Quentin the Squirrel, and the Funky Peacock. I'm writing Tina the Rock Hard Robin next year. My friend Lee Pace, we're writing Fear Reframed, and I'm going to also write the drunk monks of St Cuthbert's, and I still can't spell Ian. And I think what happens, if you can spell, it means you're a good speller. I know what quintessential means, I know what monarchical means, and I know what myopic means, but I don't, and I can spell them. It's the Iblis and the Ably words that I get mixed up with. So I did that, and I did my history degree. I did a access to higher education history degree. Then I did a GCSE in English because I didn't have the necessary qualifications. And in my last year of my degree, I got an A in English literature, in English language. But then about a couple of months after, so we need to recall some of the scores. I thought, here we go, I got an A at last, and I'm going to get. But it came back as an A star. So the year I got my BA, I also got an old-fashioned O level in English, and I was chuffed. I did 18 years teaching, and I retired last July to become the poet, and that came about from a very, very dark period 4 years ago when I was off work, which I can discuss if you want me to. Or
just you can touch on it, because I see behind you it says well-being mentor, so I know there's that angle to your work as well. It's your poetry is your love of language and of accents, and of your linguistic ability shines through in the poems, and also there's that other side to you as well, which I think is important given what's going on in the world at the moment. There's
another thing, I'm just going to dip in for a second, and it might come across a bit sycophantic, but I read a thing once, and it said, never know where your influence will end, right? And I read, you'll be a bit embarrassed here, I bought this wonderful book years ago, and it's called Optimal, no, it's not called Optimal, it's mine. Peter Pan, so it's called Essential Motivation in the Classroom. And because I'm an obsessive, I lose one. I seen one in a charity shop the other week, and then I bought this little book of thunks, and if you lose one, I got a spare one. So,
yes.
And I've also got,
you should eat tonight.
but in here, page 22, and it was a thing called a wish list, and I was supposed to plug in my own books. I plugged this, and the evidence here, Ian, is this: I did a wish list.
Yeah.
And I did the wish list in Easter Sunday, the 2nd of April, 2009, and I had a magic pen, and it lasted for 3 minutes. And one was to write books, publish poems, become a deputy head, meet Alan Peat, was a great friend of mine at the time, be a great teacher, and still be healthy, and learn a language. So, and have a lovely garden, and have little debt. I retired last year, my lump sum got rid of the debt, but I have got a lovely garden because Paula does it all. I've written 4 books. I've published 3 poetry books. I've visited Dawlish a lot. I became, for the last 2 Ofsteds, I was deemed to be an outstanding practitioner, and I became a deputy head. But then, about 3 years later, I did it again. And again, what my aim was to meet and talk with famous writers and thinkers, Sir Ken Robinson and Ian Gilbert. He was number 2. So, but what I say about that, Ian, and you know, because I'm in a position now, I always wanted to be influential and always wanted to be inspirational. And people come up to me and say, oh, you're inspirational. So I'm not, stop it. But you were, Ian, inspirational in my life. And then a friend of mine, Lee Pace, he went along to one of your gigs. I said, get Ian to sign my books. And he did. And I remember he said to you, a friend of David and I, we're thinking about doing this full time, going in. Have you got any advice? And I don't know if you remember, the advice was, Ian, just be brilliant. So, and I signed that in books. So I can't tell you how influential you were in my life. However, that came about is the fact that 3-4 years ago I was off work. And the reason I was off work, mate, I've had this from day one. This Billy Connolly says, I've got a big thing about me. It says you're a nobody. And I was a nobody. And I realized I wasn't a nobody, but I was absolutely governed with self-centered fear. I was riddled with self-centered fear. As I grew up, I was obsessive, neurotic. I was an overthinker. I was hatred of myself and others. I was emotional. I was full of ego. I was paranoid. I was insecure. I was super sensitive, full of toxic shame. All those defects of character as a little 7-year-old. And I took that baggage with me all through my life. I masked it for about 20 odd years with alcohol. And I've been sober now for 22 years. And there's a famous car organisation. There's the RAC. Then there's the other one. Probably on the screen. There's one called the AA. Let me just say, I'm in both of them. You can read into that whatever you want, Ian.
Got both badges.
Yeah, and it's an integral part of my life, my recovery. And but But 4 years ago, I was off work, mate, and I was in a dark place because it just, everybody you meet, in my opinion, they're either a drain or a radiator. And I was surrounded by drains, and I was trying to fix all the drains, but I slipped into one and I couldn't get out. But I'm married to the most beautiful, beautiful human being in the world. And I don't know about a radiator. She's an entire central heating system, you know what I mean? And my son's a plumber, and my other one's an aircon engineer, so it's great. But I got out of it, and that got me out, and that got me to follow my dreams. And while I was off, somebody said, you know, I've written these poems for 20 odd years, and says, why don't you get them published? I said, they're not good enough. I remember saying, they're only for kids. You're a children's poet, man. So all I did, Ian, is poems that I've written for years and years and years, and I just put a twist on them by just putting an accent to them. And do you want to read you one or not?
Give us a poem, yeah.
Well, obviously, an ant, and I do hope we get complaints after this, Ian. I'll deal with them.
Yeah, but make sure we do.
I'll deal with them all. Yeah. An ant can carry something like, I don't see, 200 times its own body weight. It's a gram for gram. It's one of the strongest creatures in the world, you know. Yeah. But it's only tiny, so obviously it's got little man syndrome and it's angry. I'm a Manchester United fan, so obviously they're all Scousers. All ants come from Liverpool. If there's any Scousers up there offended, hello@pepthepoet.co.uk. So it's called Angry Ant. Hey, are you looking at me? I'm as strong as an oxlar. I'm the size of a pea. Petit pois, that's French. Look at me pecs. I'm Welsh. When I'm older and I leave the school, I'm going to don the red and play for the pool. Antfield, that's where I'll play. I can have you, mate, any day. So that was the Angry Ant, and I've got a Geordie. You got
Brummies, you got Scots, you got when I received a copy of your book when it first came out, my kids made me sort of sit around the table practicing all my accents as well. Although the Liverpool one is one I can do least well, I think. But they're just enjoyable. They're not necessarily politically correct.
No.
You're just being yourself, and kids love it. Kids love the teacher that becomes a little bit too posh and has a butler, or the references to the bodily functions and all of those sorts of things. Give us another one. Give us another poem.
One they are a purpose that they're not politically correct because the squirrels and the squirrels and their ants and and I'd like to think that if they were offensive, if they offended anybody, I'd be really, really upset. But again, and if somebody took me to task, I said it's a worm. Willie the worm. I don't know if you know. I tell children, I said worms all speak with a Scottish accent, so it's called Willie the worm. I'm Willie the worm, and I roll and wriggle. Sometimes I cry, sometimes I giggle. I dig the dirt, and that's what I do. Under the ground and away from you. Away from birds that peck my brain when I pop up my head after it rains. See, fishermen, they grab me just for fun. They stick big hooks in my wiggly bum. Oh, being a worm is a hard life, but I thank the Lord for my wee wormy wife. So that was Willie the, and I've got But
bearing in mind, so we'll get letters from Liverpudlians and also they're in red, and then all the Evertonians are going to complain, and then the Scots.
The Evertons won't complain, mate, because I can just Norma the Newt. I'm Norma the Newt, and I'm not very cute, but I'm okay with that. I live across the road from Teddy the Toad, well, the pond to be exact. Great line now. I'm not fibbing, but being an amphibian has its problems too. See, our Terry's a red and I'm 100% blue. Terry's me fella and I love him to pieces, and he worries about me because I'm an endangered species. I said, listen, mate, I'll be here forever, so stand by your bed and just look clever. So I've got the Evertonians in there as well.
Very good. All bases covered. So you're a natural performer. You're a natural linguist. The poetry just sort of seems to sort of well out of you, and you're a teacher. So when you go into schools, how do you sort of set things up? What's the response? What do you get kids doing when you go into schools?
Well, first of all, I go in and the first thing I say is, right, show me on your hands. The fist is 0 and 5 is you love it. I said, right, sprouts, of course, they're all chocolate, football, and Harry Potter. I say poetry, and because if I just say, how do you like poetry? Oh, And the one, some of two, and the two thing, I can't put a two because you're going to tell me. I said, no, I said, you're the ones. I said, why don't you like poetry? And most of the thing is because I'm not very good at it. I said, no, everybody's good at poem. And I tell them, I said, there was a boxer one called Muhammad Ali, and he wrote a poem, said, me, we. I said, it was the shortest poem. I said, that's a poem. I said, I'm talking to Ian on Zoom. We're having a nice time and my water was lonely. That's a poem. I said, and I think there's the freedom behind it all. I've bought Stephen Fry's book, The Ode Less Travelled. So I'm learning all the intricacies of poetry because I think you need to learn the rules before you break them. So that's what I'm doing. But so we go in and we start off what's poetry. I've got a few little before COVID. Remember what the world was like years ago, Ian. But I'm around charity shops and I've got a massive tartan kilt with a great big belt and a little hat on with it because all Scots. It's getting worse, isn't it? All Scots wear this, and then I've got a little. It's a basic Willy the Worm, and I've got the I've got a little hand puppet for the. I've got a Newcastle United shirt, and a big curly wig, and a hand puppet. They are just, it's brilliant. But I'm an arachnid from Tyne-in-Weir. So they dress up in costumes, and then we get them to perform. My famous one is from the. I'll do it later on. I'll do a couple of verses. If I was Robbie Williams, that'd be my Angels. It's called the Scarecrow Rap. So we stand around the hall and they do the Scarecrow Rap, and I always tell them I don't know, I'm not really good at rhyming. They get to do the end rhymes, and I'll tell you what they are later on. So we get in the hall. We normally do half an hour in the hall, but then I've got activity sheets based around my poems. Now, for example, I wrote one the other week called Noah's Long List, and it was Noah. He's checking everybody onto the ark, but they all think it's a cruise liner. And Donna the Ditzy Dingo was looking rather perplexed or something. She said something, whatever's, where the hell's a disco? And she wants bingo and discos, and somebody wants a gym. But I get them to write that. And down this side, I said, I want you to look for the interesting verbs, and I want you to look for the different synonyms for said. And one of the great ones are doing, I said, like Simon Cowell, for example, he's on X Factor. That's because I've written a few poems. People always send, and they do, people send poems to me. I said, now these people have got poems. And there's Anon, and there's a friend of mine called Susanna Donim, and then there's Paula Emily Parkin, and then there's Anders O'Neill, and then there's Corbett Smee. And I said, well, you tell me, and I said, tell me about them. She said, well, I think I think she's a girl. She's about 26. And I tell them afterwards, Anon, that's anonymous. I didn't want you to know. Susanna Donim, all her friends call her Sue for short because she's called Sue Donim. And and then Paula Emily Parkin, initials of Pep. Anders O'Neill, if you the last three letters, it spells Anderson. And Corbett Smee, it's got "it's me" in the middle of it. So that's a little act. And so they dissect poems, they score on the alliteration and the comedy effect and that. So there's lots of activities, lots of performances. But I also tell them, and I've got it in here, and I say to them, forget all the poems, forget everything. I said, if you learn anything from today, you must remember this. Thank you to David, Mona and Rita for telling me the secret of life. Fear tells lies. And I say to them, year fours, right, in year 4, put your hand up. You've not even gone to your big school yet, but this normally happens when you're in bed. Put your hand up if you've gone there already to your new school. And they're smiling. I said, it's 2 years away. Nobody likes you. You can imagine the boys and girls on the gate, they're going to pick on you. The teachers don't like you. You're going to miss the bus. And there's like half of them got their hands up. I said, it's not even, you don't even know what school you're going to, but you know all the girls. I said, that, and they're laughing. I said, it's utter nonsense. And I tell them about the Wizard of Oz. I said, you pull. I said, I've got fear now. He's a little tiny thing. And I said, I get him on the floor and I kick him around the floor, my fear. I said, he's good. I said, well, no, I look at. I said, he's only this big. I said, and when he's scared, he shouts at me. I said, but what I have to do, I have to calm him. And I talk about fear as like as an external person you have to nurture and look after. And I said, because of the fear, I didn't write my books for 20 years. And they were going, oh, she said, I said, I could have written about 30 by now. So I said, when you're 10, don't wait until you're 57.
It tells lies. No, I like that. We're out. I could listen to you all day, and I'm sure you could talk all day and read poems all day. We'll have to set that up at some other point. That coffee we keep meaning to have. How can people get hold of you? I know we've done a deal with the Roving Bookshop. We've got a special sort of festival offer and sort of signings and everything. So I'll put the link for that and the links on the website. How can people get hold of you?
Pepthepoet.co.uk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pep the Poet, and all my social media is at Pep the Poet, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and I've joined TikTok. I haven't got a clue what I'm doing, but I just thought, down there with the kids, man, down there with the kids. So yeah, at Pep the Poet or pepthepoet.co.uk, or even if they just Google Pep the Poet, I'll come up and.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Lovely to speak to you. You are the inspiration, not only because of that shirt, but because of what you've set out to achieve and all the things that you've achieved, and also what I didn't realize, all that you've overcome. Tracy, on behalf of everybody, named after a Thunderbird character. I think that's what it's all about.
They always say never meet your heroes, don't they? Listen, Ian, thank you for writing this book, because that book saved my life. So thank you, my friend.
That's a pleasure. Okay, see you soon. Thanks, everyone. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye.